Potential starting center for Syracuse basketball takes an official visit to Syracuse this weekend. We break it all down on your Locked On Syracuse Wednesday episode. Let's get right after it.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome into your Wednesday episode of Locked On Syracuse. I'm Owen Valentine saying thank you so much for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today and every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We got some big news via the Twitter sphere, probably the biggest news since, I'm going to say, the Donnie Freeman crystal ball sort of situation last week, where you were starting to get a number of predictions to Syracuse, and then a crystal ball to Syracuse, and another crystal ball to Syracuse. That was probably the biggest thing last week. This has been the biggest thing in terms of recruiting so far this week. On Twitter, former Florida State center Naheem McLeoud announced that he will be taking an official visit to Syracuse this upcoming weekend, just in time for the rain to go away, maybe the sun to peek through the clouds. McLeoud, no pun intended there, will be arriving in central New York to take an official visit to Syracuse. Now, McLeoud entered the portal a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of teams reached out. And this is from 24/7 High School Hoops over on Twitter. Give them a follow. Great stuff in terms of following along with the transfer portal as it remains as busy as ever, as you got a couple more weeks left of the portal being open right now. But reportedly, he has heard from, and this was on April 22nd, and he got an update about a week later: Syracuse, St. John's, Villanova, Gonzaga, Arizona, Clemson, South Carolina, Wake Forest, Texas, West Virginia, Georgetown, Memphis, Pitt, Butler, Minnesota, Rutgers, Ole Miss, Temple, Kansas, Miami, UNLV, and Drake. It's a lot of teams. This is the first visit he will take following entering the transfer portal, which is a very good sign for his interest in Syracuse. I think when you've got a list like that, some true powerhouses in the mix, in a Kansas, in a Gonzaga, in teams of that caliber at this point in time, to see that Syracuse is the biggest interest early on, I think means a lot. And I don't think you need to read everything into that, like, oh, he's going to Syracuse first, that's where he's going to go. It's not necessarily that type of indication, but with a very, very extended list. And it's been 2 weeks since he entered the portal. Seeing that Syracuse was the second team reportedly to have reached out to him, per Mike McAllister, in an interview with McLeod. And the first visit, I do think that shows some sort of indication as to where McLeod's mindset is in terms of Syracuse and what has happened in this offseason, and things that have gone on so far. Now, the most info that I've read so far about this visit came from an article over on SI.com from Mike McAllister, who had a brief little interview with McLeod to discuss the conversations with Syracuse at this point, and the upcoming visit happening this weekend. That article from McAllister, from McLeod, talked about how the thing that stood out the most about Syracuse so far is the team effort in terms of recruiting. He says every time he picks up the phone, it's not just one guy. It's not just Autry. It's not just Brendan Strong. It's not just Jerry McNamara. It's not just Alan Griffin. It is the coaching staff calling to check up with him, calling to talk with him, calling to reach out and have these conversations. And that does go a long way with players, to show that commitment. And I've talked about it time and time again in the less than 2 months that Autry's been the head coach at Syracuse. That commitment from the group seems to be the thing that recruits, every time they talk about the recruiting efforts from Syracuse, bring up. They talk about how it's a communal effort. and everybody is reaching out and conversing and chatting and checking in and all of those things. And it means a lot to players to have a school that, right, as I've mentioned before, you have no affiliation with, that cares so much and will continue to reach out and help you along in this process while hoping that you end up there. And that seems to be the biggest thing that's jumped off the page for McLeoud at this point in time. And it's bringing him to Syracuse first. And right now, as we'll discuss a little bit later in this episode, Syracuse is in need of a center and in need of someone that, in theory, could be the starting number 5 and the guy that's playing, hopefully, 25 ish minutes a game as the starting 5, if not possibly more. This is a big role that Syracuse needs filled. McLeoud at 7'4" has the height to do it. But when we look at the skill set, there are some question marks, without a doubt. I would be lying to you if I said that Naheem McLeoud is undoubtedly the answer to replacing Jesse Edwards. That would not be factual of me to say. That would be misleading, not correct, things like that. Right now, McLeoud does seem like the most interested option in Syracuse, which goes a long way. And it seems like he's got the ability to potentially have a jump in this season with a newer role. You saw him get some starting minutes at Florida State. Started, I believe, 11 games for the Seminoles this past season. He came in off the bench quite frequently, most notably when he dropped 16 and 8 when he came off the bench against Syracuse. So he did make a little joke in that Mike McAllister interview about how he is 1-0 in the Dome in his life, or 1-0 against Syracuse in his lifetime. And so flipping the switch around would be interesting, and having to maybe build some wins for Syracuse instead of against Syracuse at this point in time. Defensively, I like McLeoud a lot better than I do offensively. Offensively, he finishes. He sort of reminds me of like the Pascal Chukwu or Barama Sidibe situation where he finishes the open baskets and he's not necessarily creating his own at this point in time. What the Syracuse coaching staff can do with him, what kind of growth he can show, that's up in the air. But what you do see right now is the potential to slot in a veteran center with ACC experience, which I think goes a long way, into a position compared to a William Patterson, a Peter Carey, a Monir Hema, whose experience is a little bit more limited at this point in time. Let's take a quick break. Let's talk a little bit about the state of the roster when we get back, plus a little bit more on the potential of Naheem McLeoud to make his way to the 315 permanently, not just for the visit happening this weekend. But until then, let's take a little break and talk about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and the calories, you need the best tasting protein bar ever. It's Built. You gotta try this. If you're like me, you want to make a healthier snack choice, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. They're healthy. They taste amazing. Seriously, they're so good, you won't think they're good for you. You got to try this. What makes them so good? For starters, they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate. That's right, it's real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies, and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, and now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, while you can still get your specialty flavors over at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk up to the pharmacy, grab yourself a box of Built Bars, or if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, Brownie Batter Puff and Churro Puff. And then you can thank me later. All right, Locked On Syracuse Wednesday. I'm Owen Valentine. Thanks for making it your first listen today and every day. Talking a little bit about the biggest news so far this week in terms of Syracuse basketball recruiting / transfers. And that is Naheem McLeoud takes an official visit this upcoming weekend to Syracuse. And right now, let's take a look at the roster as it stands. At the guards, you've got J.J. Starling, you've got Chance Westry, you've got Quadir Copeland, and you've got the question mark that is Judah Mintz, with just about 1 month until he has to fully make his decision on whether or not he's coming back. I'd assume there's some combine action before that, some stuff with the NBA draft, testing the waters even further before we get that decision. But we won't know what's up with Judah. The forwards, Malik Brown, Justin Taylor, Chris Bell, Benny Williams. The centers, William Patterson coming in as the lone recruit in the 2023 class, Peter Carey, Monir Hema. It's 11 players if you include Judah Mintz. You have 13 scholarships, Division I college basketball, meaning that Syracuse has 2, potentially 3 player or scholarships available. That second verse or the 2 versus 3 rely on Judah Mintz's decision. It's not time to slow down, and I don't think that's what Adrian Autry is doing by any means. The biggest gap on this roster is the center. You've got 3 guys in Peter Carey, Monir Hema, William Patterson, with very, very limited combined experience. Monir with the most experience, Peter Carey with a pinch more experience than William Patterson, who comes in as a true freshman. I will say, we had William Patterson on the show a week or 2 ago at this point. I love his mentality. And I think that mentality can set him up for success. Whether that success is immediate or not, I'm not sure. And so that's why a guy like Naheem McLeoud, who will come in as a junior with a little bit more experience than the other 3 at this point in time, would be a valuable asset for the Orange. Even if the offense for him isn't quite at the level that you'd want it to be, especially when you wanted Hunter Dickinson to be the guy, or when you lose Jesse Edwards, who is a top 5 transfer in the country, right? That's a drop off. And unfortunately for Syracuse, Hunter Dickinson is not coming here. He's making his decision. I think I saw some things that the decision could be as soon as this week. And Syracuse isn't in the mix. They were, lucky enough to get a courtesy phone interview. I think that's the Brendan Strawn connection there to be at least get that interview. But he is going on to a bigger program than Syracuse right now. That's the only upgrade to Jesse Edwards in the portal in terms of immediate impact. There are some other centers you've reached out to. Musa Cisse, the number 11 transfer over from evanmaya.com. He's a guy with a lot of impact in terms of experience, consistency, what he's done over a few years at this point in his career. Haven't heard anything about him and Syracuse since that initial, Syracuse is in talks with him. There's a guy in Jamarian Sharp in the transfer portal from West Kentucky. Syracuse hasn't reached out to him, but he's one of the best remaining centers available in the portal. Naheem McLeoud, all right, we just talked with him, or are talking about him still, is sort of in the middle of that pack, a little bit below Sharp in terms of those rankings in the transfer portal. But a guy that, as you saw from the list of teams that reached out, is a sought-after player. Very hard, regardless of offensive skill, defensive skill, anything. Finding a player at 7'4" is damn near impossible. So 7'4", 255 jumps off the page without question. The other one that you've heard of a little bit, Texas A&M guy, Javonte Brown-Ferguson. Haven't heard anything new since the original reach out with regards to him either. So when you look at how Syracuse is looking to fill this center position, there have been a lot of, in contacts, McLeoud seems to be the furthest they've made it with a player. And I don't know when you look at the other guys, where the interest is, because it hasn't been public or it hasn't really been followed up with. And so McLeod making the visit seems at this point like the most likely option for Syracuse in terms of bringing a new center in this season, and seems like the best option because of that. Cisse has some question marks in terms of immediate eligibility. Sharp, they haven't even reached out to, but I keep him in the mix just because I like the type of player he is. Javonte Brown Ferguson, they reached out to, haven't really heard from him. I think him and McLeod are similar in terms of what their impact could be, but McLeod's got the height. I look at McLeod, I look at the offensive stats. They don't jump off the page. But I do look at a guy with what is a lot of potential still. I look at a guy that can be coached. And I look at a guy with 11 games as a starter, as an ACC player, and a guy with the most ACC experience amongst all of these groups. Are there players from good conferences that I just mentioned? Yes. But when we look at the ACC and familiarity with style of play of these teams, familiarity with the players and the personnel already in the league, I think that should play a decent role in why you should like Naheem McLeod, right? He's gone through 2 years of preparations for ACC opponents. He's gone through 2 years of scouting ACC bigs. He's gone through 2 years of preparing for each and every facet of the conference, played in the ACC tournament. He's got that experience in the conference that you are playing in. And I think that is very important and offsets a little bit those question marks surrounding the offensive ability in terms of true shot creation and being able to actually create for yourself and post a guy up truly. I will tell you what Naheem McLeod is not. Naheem McLeod is not necessarily the shift back to the true big center that Syracuse has been asking for. This is not the return to the Arinze Onuakus or the Rick Jacksons, or maybe even the Rakeem Christmases. But I do think that Naheem McLeod presents you the possibility of a jump with that experience, and also can very easily and is pretty easily, with the question marks that are William Patterson and Peter Carey, the best option of the four at this point in time because of that experience. So it's exciting to get a guy on campus. I think that's a big deal that he is coming to Syracuse first. Does it mean everything? No, by no means does that mean everything. But it is a good sign that Syracuse reached out early and is reaching out with the full staff and is ready to have him be the guy right now. And that is a sentiment that whether or not you wanted more or not, I think when you reach out to a player and tell them that you are going to be this guy and you are our answer right now, it looms large. People like to hear good things about themselves, naturally. And I think the role that they're describing for him is probably going to be the best at Syracuse compared to the schools on this list above the orange in terms of performance right now. And I think when you're transferring from a spot where you lost your starting role, regaining that and having the team confident in you is very important to the mental state of basketball, to your personal confidence, and looms incredibly large when it comes time to make a decision for what the second stop in your collegiate career is. One more tidbit from that Mike McAllister article is that the sentiment from the Syracuse coaching staff has been that they are going to work, and they are going to work together, and they are going to really, really get going. The quote says, "As far as I know, it's come in and work. Be comfortable playing with the guys up there now and be the best version of myself I can be. I'm one of the older, mature veterans that would be participating with these guys. It would be a blessing to help those guys out." We know what he's done against Syracuse. 16 points, 8 boards. It's his best game last season. Happened against the Orange. Maybe it can happen a few more times when he's playing in Orange. And that's where we sort of sit right now. So to recap, Naheem McLeoud making a visit to the 315 this upcoming weekend, potentially filling one of the remaining 2 scholarship positions for Syracuse basketball. It could be 3 if Judah decides to stay NBA, but right now it's 2, and McLeoud presents an opportunity to fill one of those 2 roles. If you want more on McLeoud, you could read that full article from Mike McAllister. A lot of people putting something out at this point in time. I reached out to him on Twitter. We're trying to brew something up possibly for next week. That is by no means set in stone. Do not take my word for that. But we are in talks of possibly getting a little bit of chatter over here on Locked On Syracuse, which would be exciting following the visit, just to get his thoughts on the whole thing, thoughts on Central New York, thoughts on the program, facilities, all of that kind of stuff. But that's where we'll sort of leave things today. Topics for the rest of the week are sort of up in the air. I think we'll probably do a little bit of lacrosse chatter as we head into the tournament at this point in time. On the women's side, taking a look at that a little bit later this week, possibly. We'll see. We know how quickly news can change in the portal, in recruiting, guys decommitting, guys committing to a new spot, guys entering the portal, guys returning back to where they started. It all can happen very quickly. So Syracuse, at this point, with 2 spots left, McLeoud could be one. Who could the second be? If you got ideas, fire them off in the comments. If you got guys you'd like me to look at, fire them off in the comments. I did see a comment about Jalil Bethea and the possible fit that he could have if he did decide to commit to Syracuse, paired alongside Elijah Moore. We will visit that at some point in time. I did see it. I will try to hit on it when it makes sense in the episode. But in time, that's going to do it. Wednesday episode of Locked On Syracuse. If you are not, follow along on Twitter at LO_Syracuse. That's usually my first thoughts, first reactions to a lot of things, plus some random ideas, a little bit of fun over there as well. If you want to join in on that, that's LO_Syracuse on Twitter. The DMs are open. Tweet at me. I did see, oh boy, someone tweeted at me this morning. What was it? I'll pull it up. Justin Phillips, Donnie Freeman following Syracuse basketball on Instagram. I love reading into that because it means nothing, but it means everything at the same time. Always good to see that. So tweet at me if you see something, fire off a DM if you see something or want me to hit on a topic, whatever that might be. If you are not, please subscribe over on YouTube or wherever you're getting your podcast. Hit that subscription button. Turn the notification bell on and be instantly notified when these videos go live. As you might have figured out, I have been all over the place with the timing in the last couple of weeks. I apologize. I'm doing my best to get an episode out every day. And in doing that, sometimes it involves it coming out in the afternoon or the evening or at a weirder time. I will try my best. I am trying my best to get back on the normal schedule, but I am not going to be able to officially set that in stone. I'm sorry. But that'll do it for today. I'm Owen Valentine. Thanks for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today and every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Have a great day. Be kind. Make somebody smile today. Do the right thing. Whatever you want to throw out there as well. I'm Owen Valentine. I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.